before we get started, I'm going to quickly introduce one of my favorite teachers at AJRCA and also my thesis advisor. He's going to say a few words to get us started, and then we're going to get the presentation going right away. So Dr. Jonathan Friedmann, Cantor, Dr. Jonathan Friedmann, is with us today. I'm very honored that he is joining us. He's in the middle of a move. His family is moving from Moreno Valley to, why am I blanking?
Claremont,
right. And moving is, such a pain. And so thank you, Dr. Friedmann, for taking time today to be here with me and with all of us. Just a few words about Dr. Friedmann, then he's going to just say a few words of introduction, and then we'll get going on this. So Dr. Jonathan Friedmann is a teacher of Jewish music history at the AJRCA, my soon-to-be alma mater. I guess it is my alma mater. I don't know. I'll be done soon. That's what I'm trying to say. He is also the Associate Dean of the Masters of Jewish Studies program. He has a PhD in Hebrew Bible from the Joint Program of Northwest University, South Africa, and Greenwich School of Theology in the UK. He is the author of Social Functions of Synagogue Song and Synagogue Song, an Introduction to Concepts, Theories, and Customs, among many other works. I think it's like 30. So I don't know. I'm sure I'm getting that wrong. It's a lot. He's a community leader and education director at Adat Chaverim, Congregation for Humanistic Judaism in Los Angeles. And Dr. Friedmann has a blog called Thinking on Music. So I'll hand it over to you, Dr. Friedmann, just to say a few words of introduction, then we'll get started.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you all for being here. I'm probably just as excited to see this presentation as all of you are. Amy really went above and beyond with the work that she did for this, and I know the presentation will reflect that as well. You may be wondering, what is the purpose of a master's thesis? Of course, Amy is being ordained as a cantor, very soon to be a newly minted cantor, as she mentioned. But our program, our cantorial program, involves a master's degree as well, a master's degree in Jewish sacred music. So for that portion, we require our students to accomplish a 50-page minimum thesis, usually a review of literature, usually a very focused long paper on a subject, not really meant to shake the world or necessarily even present something new. But Amy went well beyond every requirement. Her thesis is longer than 100 pages. It is very much an original piece of scholarship. She examined archives containing over 1,000 documents and pieced together really what is the definitive biography of Cantor Philip Moddel, who I'm sure all of you are at least somewhat familiar with him, perhaps very familiar with him, not only as a contributor to the cantorate in Jewish music in Orange County, Southern California, the American cantorate, but his importance is even bigger than that, as we'll see. In my view, Cantor Moddel is one of those figures who's locally world famous, meaning that his importance is grand. Everyone who knows anything about him can attest to that. His abilities were, very broad and very eclectic, but he's not quite as well known as he should be. So one of the things that Amy is really accomplishing with her work and her continued work, I should say, on Cantor Moddel is bringing his fame, as it were, broader than the local community and introducing him to people who should know about him, who maybe don't, and also teaching us all more about the person that we thought we knew so well. And with that, I just want to say that Amy really did shine in this project throughout her long studies at AJRCA as well. I'm sure we're all very proud of her. And I don't want to go on and on about that because I do want to leave time for questions and answers afterwards. And of course, for the very well put together program that we're about to view. So I'm going to say goodbye for now and hand it over to Amy.
Thank you so much, Dr. Friedmann. So I'm going to share the screen with you. We've got more than 100 slides to go through together. And I'm going to change this so I can see some of you. Yeah, I don't feel like I'm in the cyber world trapped here. Okay, so I'm so excited and honored to have been able to do this study. And the title of my thesis is Bashir V'Kol TODAH, The Life and Music of Philip Moddel. And if any of you would like to read the actual written thesis, I'm happy to share a PDF copy, or there's even a few of these hard copies still left too. If you would like one of those, at the end of the presentation, I'll let you know how to get in touch with me. Anyways, let's get into this. So this first picture is a picture of me standing in the sanctuary of CBI in 2020. There's a video that I'm not going to play, but I'm happy to share it with you later. During that year, our synagogue, like many synagogues in the country, pre-recorded a large portion of our holiday services because of the pandemic. And I had this idea to use the 1968 recording of Cantor Moddel singing his Hineni with the Temple Beth Emet choir. This is something that could only have been done with audio and video production. And so we filmed me walking down the empty sanctuary of 1,000 empty seats, singing along with Cantor Moddel. And this is just a snapshot of that. And again, I'm happy to share that video. It's like 6 minutes, but we're not going to play it right now. And I'm thankful that that happened, that experience happened for a couple reasons. First of all, I was supposed to, 2020 should have been my senior year, and I should have been graduating last May in 2021, and I already had a thesis topic picked out, something else, not this. And this moment, standing here, doing this Hineni, listening to Cantor Moddel, sparked something inside me that made me really curious and interested to go further into this topic. And I called Dr. Friedmann and I said, what do you think about me not graduating this year? Because it's not going to happen. And because my kids are home in the pandemic and whatever. And what if I change my thesis topic to this? So he agreed. And I got started doing some research, and I was looking at everything I could find online. And through that process, I had a lot of help from Hal Hurwitz, who is a good friend from CBI and one of our main prayer leaders at CBI, and who grew up, knew Cantor Moddel very well. And he connected me to Gerrit Moddel, Cantor Moddel's son. And Gerrit and I corresponded, and we met on Zoom, and then Gerrit was very generous to let me come visit him in Colorado. And these pictures right here are in Gerrit's home as I'm sorting through some of Cantor Moddel's music. And then you can see here, these boxes behind me are some of the boxes of things that I was going through. I was there for 48 hours. I came with a scanner and my iPhone, and I left with, as Dr. Friedmann mentioned, over 1,000 documents that were scanned or photographed. About 300 of those were musical scores. About 700 of them were mostly documents and some photos. So that's what we're going to go through. I have about 100 slides to share with you. I've tried to pick the very best stuff. So that's a little bit about my process. But here we go. Philip Moddel lived from 1910 to 1997. I never had the privilege of meeting him, but I've known about him for a long time. And his legacy, as many of you know, is very alive here in Orange County and at Congregation B'nai Israel, and of course at Temple Beth Emet. Here's a very wide overview of what we're about to talk about. So Cantor Moddel was born in 1910 in Germany. We're going to talk more about this. He escaped from Germany in 1938, spent a brief stint in England, and then made his way to Dublin, where he lived for nearly 20 years and served as a cantor and choir master. And then to the United States, just adjusting my screen here so I can see this. Then to the United States, where he spent the rest of his life mostly in Anaheim, California. So that's the broad overview. We're going to talk about each of those sections: Germany, Dublin, and Anaheim. And I encourage you as we go, if you have questions, to go ahead and type them in the chat. Dr. Friedmann is going to help me monitor those. Probably we're going to just save them for the end, but if Dr. Friedmann, if you think there's something worth stopping for, please interrupt me and let's do that. And maybe we can unmute people at the end as well. So, as I mentioned, Cantor Moddel was born in 1910 in Posen, Germany, and he lived the first 12-ish years of his life there. Here's a map. So this is actually a modern map of Germany and Poland, and you can see the star right here. There's Posen. That's where he was born. And then this is my own little drawing. It's not exact, but this is what Germany looked like more or less at the time that Cantor Moddel was born. So this was Germany. It was not Poland. And Posen was part of Germany. In fact, that town is where Kaiser Wilhelm II's imperial castle was. And Cantor Moddel remembered being there, remembered seeing it and playing near there. So this is where he's from. And these are Cantor Moddel's parents, Rosa Godlewski and Rudolf Moddel. Rosa was born in Lithuania, but spent most of her life in Bavaria, like the southern part of Germany. She was the daughter of a chazan and a gifted violinist. And Cantor Moddel attributed much of his musical talent to his grandfather, Moses Godlewski, who could read music. He was a very good violinist, and as was Rosa, Cantor Moddel's mother. It was said that Rosa once came home after going to a concert, I think it was a Beethoven concert, and played a Beethoven piece by ear. So she was very talented. And Rudolf, Cantor Moddel's father, came from a large, close-knit family in the Samter region of Posen. He was very devout and was the Baltefila of a small Ostrit congregation. That's like a break-off congregation, very Orthodox, very frum. And he served as the Baltefila / cantor of that congregation in Posen. And he also served as a shochet, and he was a teacher, most of all. I want to share this. So this is, I think, the oldest document that I found in Cantor Moddel's personal boxes at Gerrit Moddel's home. This is a newspaper from 1900. It's the Duris Israelite. I do not speak German, so sorry that I'm butchering that. And you can see Cantor Moddel's handwriting on this. This is the actual newspaper. This in the middle of it included the obituary of his grandfather, Moses Godlewski, Rosa's father. So you can see here, this is written in that old script. I had to Google it. It's an amazing time that we live in because you can Google all of these things, how to read these scripts and translate these documents. It's incredible. But you can see right here that this was the obituary of teacher Moses Godlewski, and it talks about him, and it says he was Moshalem, like a leader in the community. He was a chassid. He was a Yirach Hashem Mirabim, and then he studied Tanakh and Siyum Poskim, which is like Talmud, Tanakh and Talmud. It says down here that he was a chazan and a shochet uvodek, meaning who did ritual slaughter, and a moil. So I wanted to share this document because I do believe it's the oldest one of everything that I found, and it's really fascinating. Moses Godlewski died in 1900, before Cantor Moddel was born. He died at the young age of 57 of a heart condition, and all of that is written here in this article. This next document is Cantor Moddel's birth certificate. As you can see, he was born January 2nd, 1910 in Posen, and there it mentions his father and his mother. And here's the whole family. So again, here's Rosa, here's Rudolf, and they have 5 children. The oldest one was Max, born in 1908. Then Philip was born in 1910, Samson in 1911, Joseph in 1912, and Sula in 1914. Her name was Shulamit. They called her Sula. So if you're keeping track, that's 5 children in less than 6 years. So they had their hands full. And Philip reported that he didn't realize it at the time because he was so young, but in retrospect, he thinks that the family was relatively well off. They had 2 maids. One was a nanny, like a full-time nanny, and one was a cook. And I'm sure that they needed all of that help and probably some more, because that's quite a busy time to have 5 young children like that. So as I mentioned, Sula was born in 1914. A month after her birth, World War I broke out, and Rudolf served in World War I. I don't know exactly what his job was and what he was doing, but there were no more kids after 1914, and Rudolf was in World War I. When he finished his service, the conditions in Posen were not great, and he decided to leave to go to Frankfurt to look for work. And so he left in 1919 to go to Frankfurt, and the family stayed behind. A year or so after he left, Cantor Moddel joined him. And it's approximately 1922, I think. So maybe a couple of years after Rudolph left, Cantor Moddel joined him, and then a year after that, Rosa and the rest of the children joined him. So this picture that you're looking at is in Frankfurt, or it was. It was the Great Bonaparte's synagogue. And this is the synagogue where Rudolf Moddel served as a chazan in Frankfurt. And it's also the location where Philip, Cantor Moddel, had his bar mitzvah. It was later destroyed in Kristallnacht. While in Frankfurt, Cantor Moddel was educated at the Kaiser Friedrich Gymnasium, which was a German public school. It was a very high-level German public school, and he attributes this place as one of the first places. He auditioned for the choir. It was very prestigious and rigorous to be accepted into the choir. He auditioned and was accepted, and attributes that as one of the first experiences that he had singing that level of choral music, and he just loved it so much, and it had a great impact on him, and he would have been only 12, 13, 14 years old during those years. Also, while in Frankfurt, when he finished the gymnasium, he did some work at the Gans Technical School. We'll look at that in a moment. And he also studied after school at the local yeshiva with his cousins. Here is his transcript from the Gans trade school, where he studied bookkeeping, German trade correspondence, business computing, shorthand, German, and typing. And these were all like preparatory classes to get him ready for university level work. And I put this picture here. This is a picture of Rudolf Moddel that I hope this is the right one, that Garrett mentioned that Cantor Moddel kept above his desk, or it was one like this. I think this is the one. All the years that he was, or many of the years that he was the cantor at Temple Beth Emet. And even in the 80s, late 80s, when Cantor Moddel was packing up his office at Temple Beth Emet, he looked around his office and he said, and he was speaking of his father, "I think he would be proud of how many Jewish books I have." And I put this here because we're talking about Cantor Moddel's education, and it really cannot be overstated how important his father was in this endeavor. And Cantor Moddel mentions this in a few places that I found as I was learning about him. So in addition to the gymnasium and the technical school and the yeshiva, his father spent many hours with him one-on-one at home, working on Hebrew and Bible and Talmud. And that was a foundation for Philip the rest of his life, and for all of the children. This is the whole family. I don't know the year that it was taken. It was prior to 1933. I know that. So all of the children must have been greatly influenced by who their parents were. So this is Samson on the left. He became a brilliant pianist like his mother. This is Max, who eventually became a chazan and a shochet and lived in Leeds, England. There's Rosa and there's Rudolph. There's Sula. Sula also lived in Leeds and participated in the Chavra Kadisha and gave generously, gave tzedakah and participated in her community. There's Philip. And here is his brother Joseph, who eventually became a rabbi and a sofer and settled in St. Louis. So that's the whole family. So in this next section, I want to talk about the years. So Philip went to the Jewish teachers seminary. I don't know how to say this in German, Jüdische Lehrerseminar, something like that, in Cologne. There's a little bit of a debate about the years. So in some places, he says he went there when he was 17 years old, which would have been 1927. However, the paperwork, which I'm going to show you in a minute, says he was there in 1925. I think it's actually possible that he did go in 1925, left, and then returned in 1927. So it could be kind of both of those things. In any case, we're going to talk about this a little bit more in just a second, but these years right after the gymnasium, kind of right after, I guess, high school, Philip went to the Jewish teacher seminary, and he also did a lot of athletic training. This is where he was learning gymnastics and starting to run track, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So while he was the program in Cologne at the Jewish Teachers Seminary was a program to train young people to become Jewish educators. And This photograph actually came from a book. I have it. Well, I don't have it with me right now, but a book written by one of the Karlbachs. Yeah, here it is. The Adash Yeshurun Synagogue of Cologne. This picture is in that book. And this is actually the students and faculty of the school in 1928. And I want to point something out here. This is Max Moddel, and he's in this picture because he was also at the Jewish Teachers Seminary. He was 1 year ahead of Philip, and I believe the reason he's in this picture is this is the graduating class from that year. So I just wanted to point that out. I was really excited to see that when I found him in the book. There's some other important people in this picture. So right here in the middle, that's Elias Gut, one of the main professors at the seminary, and this is Joseph Harth, also a main professor. Both of them are mentioned by Cantor Moddel in the interview Zane Gerber filmed of him in 1993, and they were like two of the main professors, and and Cantor Moddel knew them well. There's someone else I want to point out right here. So this is Cantor Siegfried Sof, who was also a teacher at the seminary and who worked with Cantor Moddel and undoubtedly would have worked with him on his liturgy and nusach and chanting and all his cantorial studies. Cantor Sof was a choir boy under the great Yosela Rosenblatt, and he served as the chazan at the Adas Yeshurun synagogue, which was attached to the seminary in Cologne. So they were kind of partners. I'm pointing him out, and I want you to see his face because he's going to come up later in the story. So remember him. That's Cantor Sofa. All right, here's a picture of Philip during those years while he was preparing for a recital. I don't know the extent of the music that he was doing in Cologne during this time, but he was involved in a Schubert recital, I believe. So that's a picture from that. Here's a picture of the 1929 graduating class of the Jewish Teachers Seminary. And this was one of the largest classes. And they went on some kind of trip together. And this is from them. This is from that trip. There's Philip in the front right there. And here is his final paper, certifying him as passing the program. And I love this. So you can see his final exam here in his scores. In Holy Scriptures, it was good. In prayers, good. Talmud and Mishnah, satisfactory. Jewish law studies, very good. Jewish history, good. Hebrew grammar, satisfactory. Methodology of religious instruction, good. Synagogue liturgy, very good, and cantorate, good. So he finished the program in March of 1929. And here's the document. You can see the document shows that he began there in 1925. Even the document's a little weird because it looks like it was like typed over or something, like maybe there was some question about the year. So anyways, I'm not sure. Right after Cantor Moddel finished his program in 1929, he went back to Frankfurt, where his family still was, and enrolled in the University of Frankfurt. And while he was there, so that began in April 1929, and while he was there, he took vocal music, history of piano music, history of the symphony, European geography, cartography, climatology, and oceanography. All of those are, so those are the classes he was registered for during that time. I think that this must have been the time that he was involved in Hoch's Conservatory. I could not find any documents from Hoch's Conservatory, but he mentions this on a few of his biography, like bio statements and stuff later on. And I think that Hoch's was affiliated with the University of Frankfurt and eventually merged with them and became their music department. So those music classes that he took, I believe, were associated with Hoch's. After studying at the University of Frankfurt for 1 year, Cantor Moddel left the university and took a job in Hamburg at the Israelite Community School. And I'm just gonna, this was located in Altona, which was a suburb of Hamburg. And he would spend the next 7 years of his life, 1930 to 1937, at that school. And he was a very young man. In 1930, he was 20 years old. It was said that he was the youngest person to have ever graduated from the Jewish Teachers Seminary in Cologne. So to hold that teaching credential and then go get this job. So he was really a go-getter, which I think you know. I want to show you this. So these are some of the subjects that he taught at the school. geography, drawing, German, history, arithmetic, nature and science, gymnastics, swimming, Jewish studies, and music. And he considered geography, drawing, and music his specialties. So that was what he was teaching when he was there. I put these two pictures on here because, I mentioned that he taught swimming and gymnastics. He was a very athletic man, which I know many of you know this. And these are a couple pictures. This is a picture with him and his brother Max, and this is a picture with some students. And he was their coach and teacher. And he was very athletic. He trained in track and field and high jump while he was at the University of Frankfurt. And I think it was possibly from that the rumors came, and there's a legendary story that he was part of the 1936 Olympics. There's no proof that he was. In fact, the only Jewish participant in those Olympics was the fencer, whose name I'm forgetting right now. But Cantor Moddel was certainly an athletic person. And it's possible that while at the University of Frankfurt that he was training on tracks with people who would eventually compete, and certainly when the Olympics came to Berlin in 1936, he would have been aware of that spectacle and seen it, and he spoke about that. So he was certainly around during that time. This is his certificate that certified him to be a swim instructor in Altona. This is interesting. It's written in 1936. This is from the Jewish Maccabi sports group. And I'm just going to read this to you because it's really fascinating. They wrote this in 1936 as Cantor Moddel was leaving their organization, but he'd been there for a number of years. And the two kind of leaders of that group wrote this about him, saying, before the foundation of this organization, all the preparatory work which he, Cantor Moddel, underwent with great love rested on him. Despite his professional and voluntary workload, he took over the office of first chairman after the establishment of the organization, and in this position, he played the major part in the flourishing of our group. His work was not limited to board work. It was just as valuable to us that he became our gymnastics teacher. His skillful way of teaching even the most inexperienced and unskilled members to easily practice always brought us new friends. The parties that we celebrated were not only prepared by him, he also took on the lectures and the musical part. His Zionist reliability has proven itself in the position of our chairman. If he really goes away, we will not know how to find a replacement for him. I just love hearing that about him, and this really speaks to the multifaceted leader that Cantor Moddel was becoming during these years, and that he did become. Not only was he teaching gymnastics and running the organization and planning their parties, including the musical parts and the speeches, he was just all around involved. And this was an extracurricular activity. He was doing this on the side while teaching at the Altona school. Here's a couple, so to that point, his multifaceted leadership and sort of his playfulness. I found in his papers a number of these kind of poems. These are just two examples that he wrote for different occasions at the school. And often it would be for the start of the school year or the end of the school year or for a special event. This one was for Hanukkah. And he would write these little rhyming poems, and they were just kind of fun and light and cute. And often he would have a student read them as the introduction to the program. And it's something that it looks like he did a lot during these years and continued to do later in life. Another thing that happened during these years is Cantor Moddel started to compose. He put together a children's choir at the Altona school, and which happened pretty immediately after him starting to work there. And everywhere that Cantor Moddel would go from then on, there would be a choir. And during these years, he wrote two of his first compositions, at least two of the first that we know about, which are Le Shalom and the Young Chalutzim. And I'd like to just play a little clip here of the Young Chalutzim. This is in German.
Ich bin ein kleiner Chalutz, Chalutz. Ich fahr nach Eretz Israel, fährst du mit mir? Ich bin eine kleine Chalza, Chalza. Ich fahr nach Eretz Israel, ich fahr mit dir. La 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 la.
So those were two of his first compositions, Le Shalom and the Young Chalutzim. And we're going to hear more from those songs. They were really two songs that stayed with him the rest of his life, and they were really important. And they took place during those years at the Altona School in Hamburg. And just a note, those 7 years that he was in Hamburg, forever after, Cantor Moddel considered Hamburg his hometown. And he really identified himself with Hamburg. And so those years at Altona were really formative for him. I mean, he was a very young man, and this was the start of his career. So this next slide that you're looking at right now comes from his personal papers. This is, it's something that he wrote, and it seems like it was maybe an introduction to a larger paper, though I couldn't find the larger paper. And he's just speaking about his experience working in Altona. I just want to read this last sentence. My preoccupation with music was never just an activity of my talent, but rather a strong inclination, a need. I just loved hearing that in his own words. During these years, his younger brother, Samson, he was just a year younger than him, he was the one who was a gifted pianist, like his mother, and he began studying at Hoch's Conservatory in Frankfurt. And Cantor Moddel went to go see Samson perform. This is a ticket from that performance. He saw Samson performing in March of 1932. So after that happened in March of 1932. There are some letters, some handwritten letters between Samson and Philip. Samson left the conservatory very abruptly in October of that year. He cited some difficulties with the professor and some frustration about his job prospects. He moved at least temporarily to Berlin and was staying with a friend. At least that's what I was able to gather from the letter. And many thanks to Wiebke Light and Viggo Müller for helping me with that letter. The handwritten documents were particularly difficult to read, especially I'm not a German speaker or reader. And shortly after that, in January of 1933, Cantor Moddel got the sad news that Samson had died. And the family never knew exactly what happened. There was really no closure and no explanation for what happened. So Samson was only 21 years old. This that you're looking at is a receipt for the headstone for Samson's grave that Cantor Moddel himself wrote out here. It says, "Here lies Habachor Shimshon Raphael, the young man Samson Raphael, son of the Honorable Reuven Moddel from Frankfurt, who died at the age of 21 years old on the 16th of Tevet, 5693. May his soul be bound up in the bond of life." So this happened in January of 1933. And the family really never had answers to what happened and why it happened. But it was a great tragedy, obviously. And they really didn't speak about it. This picture, I don't know when it was taken, but must have been after that, because here's Philip and Rosa and Joseph and Max, but Samson's missing. So it's Rosa and the brothers, but no Samson. I put this little chart together for myself because I was thinking about what was going on in 1933 in Germany. And then I was thinking about Philip's personal life and personal story. So as we just mentioned, January 14th of that year was when Samson Moddel died. 2 weeks later, on January 30th, Hindenburg appointed Adolf Hitler the Chancellor of Germany. So two tragedies, though I'm sure Cantor Moddel didn't, as no one did at the time, realize the tragedy and the seriousness of that, of Hitler becoming the Chancellor. Only 4 weeks later, the Reichstag fire decree happened, which removed many civil liberties from people. And then just 2 weeks after that was the end of the school year party at Altona. And I'm mentioning this for a reason. I'm going to share more about that in just a second. And then just not even 2 weeks after that, just 10 days after that, the Enabling Act, which essentially allowed the Nazi Party and particularly the Adolf Hitler to become a legal dictator. And so all of this happened in a very short, quick, time. And this is what was going on in 1933. So this March 12th end of the year school party. So there were a number of documents in Cantor Moddel's papers for various programs that he put on. And this is one of them. So you can see up here at the top, the 12th of March, 1933. This was the end of the year program. And the school year back in those days in Germany, it ended around this time, like around Easter was the end of the school year. And then it started again later, like I think in August. And so I may be getting that a little bit wrong, but it is a little different than what we do today. So here's the program, and you can see it opened with one of those prologues, one of those poems that I mentioned, as many of the programs did. And Cantor Moddel often had a student read them, and it was always really fun and cute. And then there was 3 choral pieces, a Beethoven, and this one down here, and another one at the end. So this is the program that happened on March 12th. Here is the prologue that Cantor Moddel wrote for that 1933 end of the school year. And I can't help but feel that there's a little more seriousness in this one. Many of the poems are light and silly. This one still has like a happiness to it, but it's also more serious. And so I decided to include this one. It says, "Farewell hour has struck. Admonish us with a serious word to say goodbye to friends and then goodbye to the place. This hour loosens the bonds, changes our working team who united us for many hours. Same effort, same reward. We want to stay friends forever. Friends also in other grades, because what has united us so far cannot be separated. Spirit can drive man to man, carries him into eternity. So let's stay friends, friends across space and time." And so this was the prologue that was read that day, and it was read by a student. And Cantor Moddel kept this. He kept the program that I just showed you, and he kept this prologue. And he also kept this next document, which I find really meaningful. So this comes from Ruth Jacobson, who was a 9-year-old student who attended that celebration. And she wrote this, and it was in her handwriting in Cantor Moddel's personal papers. And she writes this, and so she says, "On Sunday, we said goodbye at school. Many parents and friends were invited. The celebration began. Sophie Mowitz gave a prologue." So I think Sophie Mowitz is the one who read the poem. "Then our choir sang to Himmel, Roman, etc. Many poems were recited. Some of the children from the lowest grades performed Jacob's Dream. That was very cute. At the end of the celebration, Mr. Summer gave a lovely speech. He wished the children all the best in their future lives. All the children felt inspired. At the end of the speech, Mr. Summer passed the certificates. We went home happy." I included this because obviously it was special to Cantor Moddel. He kept it in his personal papers, and he kept it with the program. And in my research, I wanted to see if I could find out anything about Ruth Jacobson. And I did find in Yad Vashem's central database of Shoah victims' names, there was a Ruth Jacobson from Altona, born in 1923, which is the right year, who was murdered by gas at Auschwitz in July of 1942. I don't know if Cantor Moddel would have known about this, but he kept this from her. And another thing that I found out, and I don't know if Cantor Moddel would have known about this, that there was a Yad Vashem affidavit signed by Ruth Jacobson's older sister, Marianne Jacobson Bohm. And Marianne Bohm lived in Laguna Woods and died in 2011. I don't know if Cantor Moddel would have ever known her, or if any of you knew her, but I don't know if she would have ever known about this note. And I don't think that Marianne Bohm has had any children. So I don't know if there's any family to be able to share this note with, but it's just interesting that she was here in Orange County. Here's Philip's passport from this time. This is from 1933. That's what he looked like. In 1935, he composed a musical that was part of the Hanukkah celebration that year. And they performed it on the first 2 nights of Hanukkah. You can see here, December 21st and 22nd, 1935. That was the first and second night of Hanukkah. And the program was in 2 parts. The first part of the program was a variety show. It was held in the school's ballroom in Altona. And it was funded by a grant request that Cantor Moddel put in from the Jewish Winter Aid Society of Altona. So as I mentioned, the first half was a variety show. It included one of Philip's famous prologues, one of his poems. And the second half of the night was this 3-act musical written and composed by Philip. And so that's what you're looking at here. So this is the 3 acts. The first, it's called Moriah, after the name of the mountain where the story of the Akedah happened. The fate of the mountain, the fate of a people. That's what this says here. And here's kind of a synopsis of the night. It says, and this is written by Cantor Moddel because I found the typed copy of this. This is like the professional program that was printed, but I found a typed copy of it as well in his papers. And it says, probably no other block of earth has experienced the joys and sorrows, consecration and trials of our people like Mount Moriah. Just as one has a wide view of all the ups and downs of the area from a high summit, one could symbolically survey the history of our people from Mount Moriah. And on the other hand, just as the shining peak sometimes shines out on the wide plain, so at the turning points of our history, the mountain Moriah appears as a shining peak of splendor, as a simple monument of suffering. Sorry, I skipped that. But yeah, it was in 3 acts. The first act talks about the Akedah story. The second act was in German, so he did not include a synopsis because his audience was German speakers. And the third act happens at the Western Wall. I'm going to move a little more quickly because it's already 1:15. So another thing that he did in Hamburg was act as a guest scholar at the Zionist organization, and he gave this lecture on the world of Islam. This is just to show his wide range of scholarly interests. This is a picture of Cantor Moddel and his friends on vacation in Arendsee. They went there for summer breaks. And they went there every year except in 1936. The Nazis actually took over the place where they were staying and made them leave in the middle of the night. So their trip was interrupted, and he never went back after that. So in 1936 was the last visit he had there. That's Philip there. So many things in 1936, things were getting really terrible. I'm just going to read a little information here. It says, among the plethora of anti-Semitic legislation enacted by the Nazi regime, the education system was one of their repeated targets. Almost immediately after Hitler came to power in 1933, the law for the restoration of the professional civil service excluded Jews from holding government jobs, including at public schools and universities. At first, this law was only enforced at upper-level institutions, secondary schools, and beyond. Quotas were imposed on Jewish students attending public schools, but in October 1936, another law was passed excluding Jewish teachers completely from public schools. It goes on. There was many more things that happened, but I'm sharing this to say that in 1936, something changed at the Altona school. And this, I think, must have been the reason that the secretary of the Altona school reached out to the JAWNE school in Cologne about job openings. And her name was Fräulein Ellern. She was inquiring on Philip's behalf. She receives this note from the director, Erich Klibansky. Here's a picture of him. He is an important figure in the story. I'll tell you more about him in a minute. And corresponds with her. Yes, we have a position, but we're not going to advertise it. You can let your person know. They decide to meet up in Berlin. They meet. It must have gone well. There's some correspondence about details. And Philip gets the job. And his first day will be April 13th, 1937, moving from Hamburg to Cologne to the JAWNE school. There was definitely something going on in Altona. Philip reported that his father said, you need to get out of Hamburg. And this was unusual because in the German culture, it would have been very plausible that Philip would have stayed at the Altona school for his whole career. He would have stayed there for decades. It's not normal in the culture, it wasn't at that time, to switch jobs without a really good reason or to switch jobs frequently. So to leave his job of 7 years was a very big deal. There was something going on, and he took this job at the JAWNE school in Cologne. Now he's back in Cologne, where he studied at the Jewish Teachers Seminary. The JAWNE school was connected to all of those things. The Teachers Seminary, the Adas Yeshurun Synagogue, and all of that was founded by Emanuel Carlbach. Dr. Klibansky took over the JAWNE school. He became the director after Emanuel Carlbach. When Philip left the Altona school in March 1937, they wrote this transcript for him just saying what a good job he did and what classes he taught and wishing him best wishes. Here's some stats for you. So in my work, I believe that I translated 43 typed German documents using Google Translate and 3 handwritten German letters with a lot of help from Wibke Light and Vigo Müller, because the handwritten ones were very difficult. 2 Hebrew documents and 2 French documents. There's quite a bit more than this, but those are the ones that I got to. So I just thought I'd give you those stats. Here is the JAWNE Gymnasium in Cologne, where Philip went to in 1937 when he left Hamburg. And despite the craziness that was going on in the world, Philip called this his most successful teaching year yet. While he was there, he continued going to many concerts. He was an avid concert goer. He had been doing that in Hamburg as well. Here's some of the programs that he saved. However, after February 1938, there's no evidence or no programs. There's only this Kulturbund card. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about this because there's so much more to go through. But the Kulturbund was established in May of 1933. And it was an organization of Jewish artists who performed for an exclusively Jewish audience. And they did this to stay employed because Jewish artists were banned from performing in public spheres. This was legalized segregation and discrimination. And the Jewish community formed the Kulturbund as a response to it. And the Nazis actually allowed it and supported it for a while because they felt that it showed their tolerance. So in the years that the Kulturbund was active, was 1933 to 1941, they employed about 2,500 Jewish artists, and they had about 70,000 subscriber members, including Philip Moddel, and here's his card right here, and they performed in over 100 German cities. Here's the Adass Yeshurun Synagogue, which was connected to the JAWNE school in Cologne, as well as the Teachers Seminary. Cantor Moddel likely directed the High Holiday Choir there. Cantor Sofa, the one that I mentioned earlier, was the Chazan at this synagogue. But Philip's greatest musical accomplishment while in Cologne was the creation and performance of his musical The Bunte Weg, which was performed in March of 1938. It was a Zionist musical, a 5-act show about the plight of the Jewish people, told through the lens of 2 German Jewish boys. And one of them is kind of Jewishly informed and the other one's not, and he keeps asking questions. These pictures here come from a notebook that Cantor Moddel kept of sketches of costumes. I'm just going to flip through these so you can kind of see them here. And here is the ticket from one of the performances in March of 1938. It was a large production. There were 70 participants, about 50 actors, and a 12-piece orchestra, as well as a tech crew. And after that performance in Cologne, there were performances planned in a variety of neighboring cities. I'm not sure that they actually ever happened, but they were planned. And this was really a watershed moment for Cantor Moddel. It was really amazing. Here is a book of photographs that he kept. I couldn't get a great scan because I didn't want to detach the photos from the book, but you can just see some of the images. These are actual photographs from that 1938 performance. It's really wonderful. You can see Der kleine Halutz, the young Halutzim, was one of the songs, as was Le Shalom. And I want to just go to this final picture, these final pictures here. You can see the end of the show here. There's Philip with flowers in his hand, bowing for an audience. There, this is mind you, 1938. There's no Israel yet. This is like a proto-Israeli flag behind them, and the children are there with him. And this was just an amazing moment for him. While in Cologne, Philip joined the Jewish teachers group, this Jüdische Lehrhaus. It was a group of educators. They offered adult education. And on the back, so this was the opening of their winter half year. They brought in Dr. Karlbach from Karlbach from Hamburg to give a talk on interpreting the Bible. And on the back is the roster of people included in this organization. This is why I want you to see this. This is really a fascinating roster of people. And for time, I'm not going to read all the names and go through everything, but I'll just tell you that there were 3 the past, current, and future head rabbis of Cologne are in this list. That's David Karlbach, or it's Isidore Caro here, and Adolf Kober and Ludwig Rosenthal, as well as David Karlbach, who was the kind of heir of Emanuel Karlbach, who founded all of these schools. A number of professors and teachers, a feminist women's suffragette, and a newspaper guy. And you can see Cantor Moddel is on this list of people. If you read my thesis, you'll see, you can read more about each of those people. It's really fascinating who this group of people was. Adolf Kober, who was the current head rabbi of Cologne at the time, was working on a manuscript for this book, The History of the Jews of Cologne. I have that book. That's a picture of it sitting on my desk. And the manuscript was finished in 1937, and an epilogue. So this is right at the time when Philip is there. And in the epilogue of that book, he writes these words. I won't read all of it, but just to say that the chief activity of all the Jewish organizations was the hastening of Jewish emigration. So this organization, which was meant for Jewish adult education, it was kind of like maybe the CSP of its time, was really focused on getting people out of Germany. And to that, I want to play this little clip. This comes from the video footage of Zane Gerber. It was filmed April 11th, 1993. It's just a 90-second clip. There's more than 3 hours of footage of this, which I've seen all of it, and I'm happy to share with you. Zane has made it available. I can share it with you as a YouTube link, and it's also going to Dahlia Taft at the Historical Society of Orange County. And anyways, I just want to play this clip for you about how Philip escaped from Germany, how he got out. So mind you, it's in 1938 now. What you're about to hear is a discussion between him and Cantor Sof, the man that I pointed out to you in that picture earlier. Cantor Sof was the chazan at the synagogue and was one of Philip's teachers. And so prior to this conversation, Erich Klibansky, the director of the JAWNE school, had, because of everything that was going on, started to devise of a study abroad program for his students. And he was having JAWNE students learn English and Hebrew, and had this idea that he was going to send them on study abroad to England, and that this would be a way to get students out. So that plan is in place, and Klibansky, I think, is hoping that Philip is going to leave to go to England and get some training in English, because he doesn't speak English, and then come back and help the kids get prepared to go on their study abroad, okay? And then this happens with Cantor Sof, and this is a conversation between Cantor Sof and Philip. This is in July of 1938.
No, he said, we are leaving Germany tonight. And I said, what you going to do? I'm not prepared or anything. I meet you at 8 o'clock, he said, and at the railway station, and we are leaving. So I got everything ready, papers, whatever was necessary, and I met him. And I asked him what was so urgent about it. And as far as I know, he said, in the house where I live, I used to be friendly with one man who lived there and who became an SS officer and a party. And when he came down the staircase this morning, he said, somehow whispering, we'll pick you up tonight. That's all. Picking you up tonight at this concentration camp. And that's why he decided so suddenly, because he urged me to come. And we went out, and in retrospect, I realized that was a very sound advice. I may not have been able to get out afterwards.
So thanks to Zane Gerber for that footage. So Cantor Moddel left Germany in July of 1938 with a 4-week visa, ostensibly to return and teach that fall at the JAWNE school and help students go on their study abroad. However, when the 4-week visa ended, Cantor Moddel went to the train station intending to return, and Cantor Sof physically restrained him and said, "You idiot, you cannot go back." And so he didn't. He did not go back. He stayed in London. And only 3 months after that, or 4 months later, I guess, was Kristallnacht. And here you can see the Adas Yeshurun synagogue in ruins. This is the best picture I have, and the teacher's seminary in ruins. And I'm just pointing out that we already saw this picture. There's Philip at the seminary. I think he's standing right here in the building, I think. And so all of the synagogues in Cologne were vandalized or destroyed by fire in Kristallnacht. And immediately after Kristallnacht, Erich Klibansky put his plan into motion to start the study abroad. And he sent the first of 4 classes from the JAWNE school to England for study abroad. He personally accompanied one of the classes, but then returned to Germany. And Erich Klibansky ended up saving 130 students, about a quarter of the student body. He had hoped to maybe get the entire student body to England and move the entire school. He was able to get 130 students. And when that happened, Cantor Moddel made his way to Leeds to serve as the housemaster of the Steinbeck Lane Boys Hostel. His sister was in Leeds. She had moved there and gotten married there and was also working in the effort. And this quote and the next few are from children who were who were under him at the hostel during that time. And there's some amazing quotes. I'm going to just flip through these because of time. It's already 1:27 and we're just now in Dublin. So during that time, he served as the housemaster. He led a choir for Habonim, and some of these refugee students were part of that choir. And a famous cantor, Nandor Freilich, heard the choir and was passing through England to go to Ireland and invited Cantor Moddel to join him in Ireland to run the choir for High Holidays in 1938. Now we're in 1939 because it's already been, so now we're in 39. So Cantor Moddel leaves the hostel and he goes to Dublin in the summer of 1939. And here is the choir from 1939. They rehearsed 4 hours a day for 6 weeks leading up to the High Holidays. There's Philip right there. There's Cantor Freilich, Nandor Freilich. They were about the same age. And here's his choir. And it was, I guess, a really spectacular choir. There was actually like a kind of rivalry between them and the other synagogue. So I want to show you something here. This is actually just a shot from my iPhone. So World War II broke out on September 1st, 1939. And Rosh Hashanah was the 14th and 15th of that month. So as Cantor Moddel was preparing the choir for High Holidays, the war broke out and he was essentially stranded in Dublin. And he ended up staying the next 20 years. He stayed there and ended up working there for nearly 20 years after that. The Adelaide Road Synagogue, where he was hired, was the largest of 5 synagogues in Dublin. It was also known as the Dublin Hebrew Congregation. It had 248 seat holders around that time. And Cantor Moddel was hired as the choir master for £180 a year. Here is just an overview of the migration of Jews to Ireland. There was a large migration at this time, and you can see it peaked really in 1946. I've seen some other statistics, though I could not document them, that showed that the peak was closer to 5,000 or even 5,400, but I could not prove that or document that. So these are the numbers that I got from the Census Archive in Ireland. Shortly after High Holidays that year in 1939, Cantor Moddel joined the Royal Dublin Society, which was, you can read more about that in my thesis. They did all kinds of things, but Cantor Moddel went to many concerts over the next few months that were put on by the Royal Dublin Society. In February of 1940, Philip founded the Dublin Jewish Musical Society, which was a choral organization. Men and women could sing in it, whereas the synagogue choir, you noticed, was only men and boys. And they started rehearsing, and they put on their first concert on April 14th of that year, 1940. There was 70-something people in the cast of that concert. Again, it was a variety show for the first half. And similar to what Cantor Moddel did for Moria and De Bunte Weg. The second half was a musical that he called Where the Cedar Grows, a play of Palestine, and it included his piece Le Shalom and De Kleine Chalutz. This is a modern day view of 89 Grove Park, where Philip and Nandor Freilich, the cantor, were housemates. And it was in walking distance of the shul, about 3/4 of a mile. In addition to the Dublin Choral Society, Music Society, Philip directed other choirs, including the Overseas Choir, the Glee Singers. He performed at the Rotary Club. Here's a picture of the Choral Society. It's very tiny. You can see the emblem on their chest of the harp and the Magen David. So it's the harp is the symbol of the crest of Ireland, and the Magen David is the Star of David. I want to talk a little bit about the Margulies family. I do not have a picture for them, so I'm just going to tell you a few things about them, and then you'll know, and then why they're important. So the Margulies family was Lionel, also known as Leo, and Frida, and they had 2 daughters. They lived in Frankfurt, but left there in 1933. In fact, we think that they maybe knew the Moddels, at least were just as acquaintances, but the kids didn't know each other necessarily. When the Margulies family left Frankfurt in 1933, they spent 2 years in Paris. Then they immigrated to Ireland in 1935, and Leo owned a leather goods business in Dublin. His daughter Paula met Philip, and in early 1942, they got engaged. They were 11 years different. Paula was, I think, around 21 at this time, and Philip would have been about 32. And Paula reached out to Philip's parents, who were still in Hamburg now. They had moved, and she sent greetings, and they wrote back this telegram: "Dear Paula, thank you for your message. We warmly welcome you as a daughter. Heaven bless your covenant. That will now be our daily prayer." This handwritten letter, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but just notice the date, April 14th, 1942. This side is written by Rudolph, by Philip's father, and this side by Rosa, his mother. They sent this to the 2 of them, congratulating them on their wedding. You can read it in its entirety in my thesis. Here is the ketubah from the wedding that happened in May of 1942. I entitled this section of the thesis "Love and War," because that's what was really going on. This is a modern day photo, but this is the building where Philip and Paula moved to, 38 Lower Bagot Street, and then later to Sandy Mount Avenue. A year after the wedding, their first child, Susan, was born. Later, she would be known as Sive. And a year after that, their son, Peter, was born. So Cantor Moddel was making money teaching music lessons and German and doing the choir master stuff, but Leo Margulies would not have his daughter living on a choir master's salary. So he strongly encouraged Philip to open his own business, which was sort of a branch of Leo's manufacturing business, his leather goods business. And Cantor Moddel made children's clothing. You can read more about that in the thesis. I want to keep moving, but that's how he made his living while he was doing all of his music. Here's a picture of Paula and Philip. This was taken a little bit later, but it's the only picture I have of the 2 of them. This postcard is from, I think, 1945. It comes from Rudolph. So I just want to back up one thing. This letter that I noted from the parents here, April 14th, 1942. 3 months later, July 1942, they were both deported and taken to Theresienstadt. I don't know how much Philip knew about his parents while they were there in Theresienstadt. In 1945, he received this postcard from his father saying that his mother had died on December 18th, 1943 of pneumonia while in Theresienstadt. Rudolph survived the concentration camp, but was greatly affected, as you can imagine, physically and emotionally and mentally by that experience. This is the affidavit that Cantor Moddel filed with Yad Vashem for his mother. I'm going through this pretty quickly now. In 1946, Philip became an Irish citizen and obtained an Irish passport. And I think the reason he did this was because, so immediately after getting this, he went to visit Rudolph, who had been recently liberated and was staying in a hotel in Paris. He went to go pick him up and bring him home. He has an account of that in the footage from Zane Gerber which is really compelling to listen to if you listen to that. And he brought Rudolph home to live with Paula and him and he and the family in Dublin. And it was Rudolph, who had been, a vibrant educator and cantor, was really just emotionally and physically devastated from the war, as you can imagine, and from all the tragedy that he had suffered. And while he stayed most of his time in Dublin, he did visit Sula, his daughter, Rudolph's daughter, in Leeds. And on one of those trips in March of 1949, Rudolph passed away. And this is the headstone of Rudolph, which is in Leeds. He was buried there. He died in March of 1949. And they put a memorial to Rosa on the same stone. In 1949, the Dublin Hebrew congregation celebrated the installation of Rabbi Emanuel Jacobowitz, who became the chief rabbi of Ireland. And this document here, it was typed by Cantor Moddel and is a very detailed description of that ceremony in which Cantor Moddel and his choir participated. And there's lots of detailed information about which pieces they sang and how the ceremony went. And it was really a historic event at the Adelaide Road Synagogue and for Cantor Moddel to be a part of. This was in 1949 at the height of the Jewish population in Ireland, and also at the height of the membership of that synagogue. They had, I don't see it here, it's like 365, I think, seat holders by this time. 1 month after the installation, Cantor Nandor Freilich, the one I pointed out to you, suddenly died of cancer. He had a very aggressive cancer and died all of a sudden. And Teddy Lewis, who had been serving as a rabbi there, immigrated to the United States. So this left Philip, Cantor Moddel, as the main functionary of the Adelaide Road Synagogue at the height of its population in 1949. The community did not hire another rabbi or cantor until 1951, though they did have Jacobowitz there, and he did come and speak there. But really, Cantor Moddel was running the synagogue, and he was acting as the main clergy and functionary of the synagogue, and certainly as their cantor. In 1952, Philip took the Dublin Jewish Music Society to the first Zimriya music festival, which was held in Israel. You can read all about this. This was really a historic event, and there was 41 choirs there. 27 singers came from Dublin. Here's their repertoire. You can see there's the conductor, Philip Moddel. Here's the things they sang. Yale by Engel, and Al Tira by Allman, and Le Shalom by Moddel. And here's an article about that. I'm not going to stop to read this, but they did well. They were considered in the top 3. Here they are, the second. So this happened every 3 years. So the second Zimriya happened in 1955. Here they are. Philip's right here in the middle. They traveled by boat that time. And here is a list of all of the Zimriyas that Cantor Moddel attended over the years. So 7 of them total. Even after he left Dublin and came to Los Angeles and Orange County, he continued going to the Zimriya. I'm going to skip through this. I'm going to skip through this too. This is actually really amazing, but just for time's sake. So in 1958, Cantor Moddel made the decision that it was time to leave. Well, I skipped one important thing though. In 1954, their third son, Garrett, was born, and Garrett's with us on the Zoom today. So I'm so honored that Garrett's here. And not only was now their family complete, but the population of Ireland was complete and now starting to decline. And Cantor Moddel was really feeling like he was ready for more. He wanted to do more musically, and he was looking for his next step. He and Paula ended up deciding to go to the United States, though the family was very happy in Dublin and not too excited about leaving. But they went to New York. They spent 3 weeks there and decided that where Philip really wanted to be was Los Angeles. And there's much more to tell about this, but long story short, he came to Los Angeles and he was hired by Temple Beth Emet. And you can read more details about how that happened, and Max Vorspan, who kind of connected him to the temple, and how he got that job. And he was hired in August of 1958. Here's a clipping from the Los Angeles Times, and he became the cantor of Temple Beth Emet in Anaheim. Here's another article about that. And here's Rabbi Tofield and Cantor Moddel at High Holidays, and this is an article about their High Holidays. I love this article because it gives detailed information about the choral pieces that are going to be sung in the High Holiday ceremonies. Can you imagine if I put that in for the CBI, the list of the choral pieces? Like it was such an important thing back then, and people really valued that so much. And even all the members of the choirs, their names are here in the article, which is really amazing. I want to just show you these stats about Temple Beth Emet, and so you can see what a happening really was going on in Anaheim. So 1957 is the year that Beth Emet was established. They had 3 B'nai Mitzvahs. 1958 is the second year, and that's when Cantor Moddel joined them. They had 10 B'nai Mitzvahs. By 1964, there were 53, and they were up to 400 families. By 68, they had 73 B'nai Mitzvahs, and they were up to 550 families, which means that the 60s had an average of 48 B'nai Mitzvahs per year. Can you imagine that? Almost one per week. In 1978, they had their peak of 82 B'nai Mitzvahs, and the 70s had an average of 63 B'nai Mitzvahs per year for that entire decade, which means more than one per week. There were many Shabbats that had a double or triple B'nai Mitzvah. So those are the stats of Temple Beth Emet and how it was growing, and Cantor Moddel was an integral part of that. In 1962, they broke ground on a new location where they had been meeting in a house on Emily Street. They broke ground, and in July of 1963, the construction was complete, and they moved into that new sanctuary and dedicated it. They had a beautiful dedication ceremony. Dahlia Taft shared with me the recording of that ceremony, which I'm sure she would be happy to share with you, or I can share. If you were there, it's really amazing. You can hear all of them singing. Let me just play this clip of the children's choir singing MPL. I'll just play just a few minutes of it. There was another clip of Ma Tovu, the Lewandowski. I'm not going to play it right now just because it's already 1:43 and we're over time. Here's a few more pictures from Beth Emet days. I'm just going to kind of skip through these. This is a rubric of music that Cantor Moddel put together of a typical Friday night service, special music here, holiday music, Israeli music, and these were kind of the standards that the choir was singing. The choir was an integral part of the community and of the service. Every Friday night, the adult choir would perform, and often the youth choir would join them. They would rehearse weekly. They would do a second kind of check-in rehearsal 30 minutes before the service just to go over things. Cantor Moddel was lovingly known to sometimes change the lineup of songs in the middle of the service. So they would plan something, and then in the service, he would turn to them, and instead of Lachadodi number 2, he would change and say, we're doing number 5. And they had 10 seconds notice to get to the right page in their music and sing it. And many people shared that kind of story with me. And there was just lots of love for that experience of singing in the choir, and they were really good. Another thing that they did was an annual Thanksgiving Eve service. This happened for many years. It was a collaboration between the First Methodist Church and Temple Beth Emet. It happened in alternating years at one of their locations or the other. Every year it opened with We Gather Together, and it ended with Yigdal, and they sang America the Beautiful. Here's a list of choral pieces that they did, and I'm not going to spend too much time on that. In 1968, the choir recorded the Beth Emet favorites that many of you know, these songs here. Every song was recorded in a single take, which is really incredible. I know I do some recording myself, and I know how incredible that is. And there's some really beautiful ones. And it was from this album that this Hineni right here that I talked about at the beginning that I used in 2020. I also sang it in my cantorial recital last month. And there's just some really beautiful things on here. Here's a picture of the choir during that time. I'm gonna skip there. There was I wanted to play a clip of Shiviti. Maybe we'll do it at the end. In addition to the music, Beth Emet really invested in their adult education program. They had the Adult Jewish Institute. This was part of the conservative movement's United Synagogues National Academy for Adult Jewish Studies and the University of Judaism. They offered all kinds of classes there. Rabbi Tofield and Cantor Moddel were the main teachers, though there were others. Here's some of the classes Cantor Moddel taught. And I'm just showing this to show that he was a lifelong learner and teacher. I won't read all of them, but those are some of the classes that he taught. To that, his lifelong learning, Cantor Moddel went to the University of Judaism immediately after coming to California and started taking classes. And in 1962, in the fall of 1962, he entered the School of Fine Arts to become a doctoral student. And he ended up writing this book, which was later published as a book. It was his dissertation on Joseph Achron. You can read all about that in my thesis. And the department was headed by Max Helfman. And later in 1974, Cantor Moddel wrote a biography of Max Helfman. Unfortunately, Helfman tragically died at a very young age in 1963 while Cantor Moddel was a student in the program. He was friends with him, and this book has multiple firsthand accounts of his relationship and his experience with with Max Helfman, and speaks of his career, of Helfman's career and his music. There's some really amazing things to share about all of that, some incredible stories. You'll have to read them in the thesis. I'm going to just keep moving. I did want to include this. So Cantor Moddel dedicated this composition of Psalm 130 to Max Helfman. It says right here, to Max Helfman. And down below here is Max Helfman's Shema Kolenu. You might be familiar with it. Shema Kolenu. I won't sing it for you, but why I'm including this is look at the similarity of the introduction here. So the famous introduction, organ introduction for the Helfman is dum, 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 da, 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 like that. And you can see Cantor Moddel's introduction here with accompaniment, and he only did a few pieces with accompaniment, but look, it's dun, 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 very similar. And he was definitely paying homage to Max Helfman in this piece. Here's a picture from a big concert that happened at Temple Beth Emet, probably in the 80s. I'm not sure the exact date. Here's another picture. And there's so much more to tell you, but I want to end with this. So in the 80s and 90s, a couple named Irene and Dieter Korbach began researching the Jews of Cologne, and they stumbled across Cantor Moddel's composition, his musical De Bunte Weg. They wrote to him, and long story short, they ended up putting this musical on, and Cantor Moddel flew to Cologne in 1992 to see it performed at the Catholic Ursuline school. And they sang his piece, and then, they performed the entire musical. Then again, in 1997, just 5 weeks before Cantor Moddel died, this monument here, it's the Lion's Fountain, was dedicated to the memory of Erich Klibansky, who saved the 130 students from JAWNE and who refused to leave JAWNE until it was forcibly closed in 1942, and then his family was deported and assassinated. This monument was erected in memory of Erich Klibansky, and at the dedication of the Lion's Fountain, they played Cantor Moddel's Le Shalom. I'll play just a few seconds of it. Just a few seconds there. So I wanted to end on that, and then just show you just these few resources. Part of my thesis was that I attempted to catalog the works of Cantor Moddel. I count 112 original compositions and 160 arrangements. There may be more than that, but that's the tally that I got. And there's 6 pages of catalog in my thesis showing that. Gerrit Moddel started a WordPress document, a blog document with musical scores from Cantor Moddel. You can find it here at cantormoddel.wordpress.com. About half of the scores are loaded. Gerrit put them there, and I am tasked, and I've planned to do it very soon. I just looked at it earlier last week to put the rest of them up there. So keep checking that blog if you're interested in getting musical scores. They're gonna all be there. And there's my email address if you want to get in touch with me. You can ask me anything. And here's a picture of him. And this emblem that he carved with an X-Acto knife in a piece of linoleum or rubber, it says Bashir V'Kol Todah. And it's from this that I took the name of the thesis. These are words from Tzur Mishalot. And you can see the little emblem I've used on the bottom right here is my own kind of version of this, but the original is right here. This is the logo that Cantor Moddel carved. And it is with my own voice of thanksgiving that I'm so grateful for this project and to everyone who contributed to it, especially Garrett and your brother Peter also who contributed, and Hal who contributed so much. Peter, I see you there. Wonderful. And of course, Dr. Friedman, thank you for all of your guidance and help. That was just so helpful during all of this. There's so much information. I feel like I had to skip through so much of it. And I thank you everyone for hanging in there with me because we went a little bit late, but thank you to Dahlia Taft and Zane Gerber and Bob Messi and Linda Ecker and Bob Sirotnik and Peter White of Dublin and many congregants at CBI. So many contributed to this. There's lots more to know. If you are interested in reading the thesis in detail, and there's lots of detail, I am happy to share the PDF with you, or there are some more printed copies. I'm happy to share that with you as well. So that's it. I could go on and on, but I'm making myself stop. So thank you everyone for being here with me. And I will just give a few moments for Q&A, even though I know we are over time. So if you, thank you for the heart. Thank you, Linda. I'm going to allow people to, I've changed the setting now so you are allowed to unmute. So if you'd like to ask a question or make a comment, you can now, but the presentation is officially over. If you'd like more information, please type your email address in the chat and I will respond to you, or email me directly at acats@cbi18.org. I'm happy to share information with you, share the thesis with you. There's so much more to share, man. I had so much more I wanted to tell you, but thank you.
Amy, I could have heard you forever. It was just amazing, this trip back into time with Cantor Moddel and to see the Messies. I just like, that's just touching my heart so much just to see you.
Thank
you. And to see Hal and to see, of course, Garrett, my neighbor. I just, I still see him playing with my sister Betty. So this has been just chills down my spine and just a wonderful hour with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Linda. And thanks for your contributions.
Cantor Ecker, I think I caught your picture up there also. So I have one very minor question, and that is, in the early days, Cantor Moddel spelled his name Philip, ending with 2 P's. At what point do you know, did he change it and why?
I don't know if I can answer that. Maybe Garrett can. Throughout the documents, it seems like in Germany, it was more common to spell it with 2 P's, and then in Ireland and in the United States with 1, but I'm not really sure if there's a reason beyond that.
Chat is disabled. Can you enable chat?
Oh, sure.
And if you could say the address of your email a little bit more slowly, that would be great.
Okay, I believe everyone can chat now, and I'm going Garrett, if you'd like to respond to that name question, I'm going to defer to you on that one.
I don't know the answer. He did change the way that what he called himself at various times. So, for example, in Dublin, sometimes he referred to himself as Phil O'Dell to make it sound Irish.
Yes, and he published some secular pieces. They're in the Library of Congress, registered under Phil O'Dell.
Cantor?
Yes.
Oh, I had the privilege of being bat mitzvahed in 1961 on Emily Street with Cantor Moddel at my side, and actually sang with the junior choir at the groundbreaking ceremony.
Wow.
Of the service. And then in 1988, he was sort of semi-retired, but Temple Beth Emet was in between cantors. One had been let go and the new one hadn't been hired. And I called him frantically and said, my son needs to have somebody teach him his Haftorah. And he said, meet me at my old office every Tuesday at 6 o'clock. And so he ended up teaching Jonathan, getting him prepared for his bar mitzvah. So I have very wonderful memories.
Amazing. That's wonderful. Thank you for joining us today.
Oh,
The hands up are for those who want to speak.
Yes, please, Joan, go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. It was the greatest honor of, I think, my life to sing in the choir. And I see so many people that were in the choir. Hal Hurwitz, hi. Bob Messy, absolutely. Sarah, how are you? I'll call you guys later. It was just an honor. My son adored Cantor Moddel. And when it came to his bar mitzvah, he almost didn't have it. If it wasn't for Cantor Moddel, he probably would not have had it because he'd had a misunderstanding with the rabbi. And he said he's not going through with it. And Cantor Moddel stepped in. He said, I'll take care of it. And he did, for sure. Another thing that Cantor loved tremendously was theater. And my son was in theater quite a bit. In fact, he's graduating from Harvard next weekend with a master's degree in literature and creative writing. And he did some plays at Cypress College, and Cantor Moddel was there at every single one of his plays. So thank you for doing this. It's a joy. And
You're welcome. Thank you for joining. So I hope that you can see from what I was able to share that Cantor Moddel's life was interwoven with some very important pieces of Jewish history in the 20th century. You're in Europe and America and in Israel. And this is one of the reasons why it's really a fascinating story. It's not just fascinating, but it's really an important study. And as Dr. Friedmann mentioned at the outset of this presentation, the depth of detail and documents available in this project, and that's thanks to Gerrit Moddel, really also stands out and makes this a unique project. We don't know a lot about a lot of cantors, and the ones we do know about typically are Eastern European. We don't know a lot about German cantors. So to have this kind of information for a German cantor is really unique and special. And and of course, Cantor Moddel was a very unique and special person. And so it's really fascinating that that exists. And I feel very privileged to have been able to work on it.
Amy, I would just like to say that I think my cousin Linda Ecker got all the singing traits from our family, and she's blessed with a good voice, because when I approached Cantor Moddel about being in the choir, he said, you can be in it if you move your lips only.
He had very high standards. He had very high standards.
But I loved him, and I thought the world of him and Rabbi Tofield.
Amazing. So I know everyone, it's 2:00 now, so it's been an hour and a half. I don't want to keep you any longer, but I just want to say thank you so much. Do reach out to me at acats@cbi18.org. I'm happy to share materials with you or answer any questions that you have. But I really am grateful for everyone coming today and being here for me to share this information with you.
I can make a comment.
Please.
Amy, you have done an amazing job. You wove together a history in great detail that I never knew and my brother never knew. And when you came over and you were here for a relatively short period of time, I'd wake up in the morning already, you were zooming through documents and you didn't stop for a moment. Your work really shows, and you've done a stupendous job.
Thank you. It means so much. Thank you. Jeremy's here. Hi, Jim. I didn't see you before. Hello.
I've been here all along.
Oh.
It's midnight here.
Oh, thank you for joining. Gerrit, your words mean so much to me, and your generosity and letting me come and crash at your house and you didn't even know who I was and go through your family treasures. It's really an honor for me. Thank you so much.
Zane Gerber, yeah.
It was wonderful to learn more and more about a cantor that I really loved and who taught me a great deal.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Maybe I should say something too, Amy.
Hi, Peter. Yes, please do.
Yes, it's the first time I see you. but we spoke together. And I think what my brother said is spot on. And it's just such an amazing work you've done, bringing pieces together and a lot of the story of his life with many things I did not know myself. And it's been very touching for me to watch through what you've done now. And I thank you.
Thank you so much, Peter. And thank you for how you contributed when we spoke on the phone and the emails that you answered. And I can also hear your voice in Zane Gerber's footage because you're in the background and your sister was in the background and you're talking and like prompting your dad and helping him. So I felt like I knew you already. I have to tell everyone. So Zane Gerber took that footage in 1993. I said there's more than 3 hours of footage. But I didn't watch it. I didn't watch it till it was like one of the last things I did. I had already like gotten all the documents that I could get on my own. Then I'd already been to Garrett's house and gone through those. And I'd spent a couple months working on those documents. And I'd already written a portion of the thesis before I watched the Zane Gerber footage. The reason for that was it took me a while to get it digitized. It was in a V8 format, I think, whatever it was. And I had to get it digitized so I could watch it. And it was actually, I'm so thankful that was the order of events because it was so exciting for me by the time I got to that footage because I knew so much about Cantor Moddel by that point. I was like literally hanging on every word. I was like, oh, I want to hear that. Tell me, say more, you know. So it was really exciting. So thank you to Zane for that.
Where's Susan Moddel?
Say that again.
Where's Susan Moddel?
Unfortunately, she passed away a few years ago in Ireland.
Oh, I'm so sorry. We were friends. I did not know that.
Well, I don't want to keep it everyone any longer, but I am so grateful for Dr. Friedman for your time, and especially as you're going through a move with your family to take time for me today and be here for this presentation. I really appreciate you and to everyone for being here. So do follow up with me. I'm happy to share materials with you.
Not to interrupt your program, but don't you have to market aren't you speaking again for Temple Beth Emet on the subject?
Oh, yes, thank you. Thanks, Ari. So I am. So I'm going to give a version of this presentation. I'm going to have to, as you can see, pare it down because there's a lot. On June 16th at Temple Beth Emet on Zoom, they're doing a happy hour. I think it's going to be in the evening, 7:30 at night. I'm not sure. And so if you're interested in attending that, reach out to me and I'll share the information for that. And I'm going to give an abbreviated presentation and we're going to spend a little more time schmoozing and just reminiscing because I know there's lots of people from Beth Emet who knew and loved Cantor Moddel.
One last thing, I heard Cantor Moddel gave grades to all the students who went through the Bar Mitzvah project. So I'd like to know if you'll list the grades, people that we know, like Jeremy Siegel, Ed Levin, would be very of interest to me. You could put that up on a website just to share.
Thank you, Renee.
and Hal Horowitz and so on. Okay.
I'm going to just offer one more quick plug. As you probably know, in 1 week from today, May 30th, 1 o'clock, Amy will be involved in our ordination ceremony at the AJRCA. She will become a cantor officially on that day. I'm sure the link has already been made available to you. If you don't have it already, I'm sure Amy will love to send it out as well. That will be live streamed. So I hope you can all join us for that very wonderful and long-awaited event.
Thanks, Dr. Friedman. All right. I see my sister's on from Switzerland. You need to go to bed, Allie. It's like 11 at night. And I know Peter's in Switzerland and Jeremy's in Israel, so you got to go to bed too.
Eventually.
In Switzerland? Is that where he lives?
I think you said, yeah, that's right.
Many thanks, everybody.
Good
I'll
to
stay
see
on.
everybody.
Yeah, good to see you. I will stay on, but I don't want to keep anyone else, so feel free to go. Thank you so much.